Now, if you have found yourself here watching this video, there's probably a couple reasons why. A, you probably have a problem with your power steering rack leaking. B, you just want to know how to retrofit a 2015 plus STI steering rack into an older Subaru. C, maybe you're just bored. D, maybe you just want to watch the video. E, A, B, C, D, E, are we on E? 5 something? I don't know, maybe you just want to watch it. So what is going on, guys, and welcome back to the video. So today we are doing a very nice upgrade to the 2014 Subaru WRX Hatch behind me. Right now I have the OEM power steering rack in the car, and it's having a leaking issue from the inner boot, the inner tie rod boot. Now, yes, you can go in there, you can try to repair it. I found that trying to repair power steering racks is very hit or miss. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, even after the repair. So in my mind, it's easier and better to just replace the rack with an OEM one rather than try to repair it or try to buy a remand rack if you don't, it's a remanufactured. So let me show you what we got here, and then we'll kind of go over what we got to do here to get this old rack out. Right here we have the new power steering rack. I got this from Flatiron Tuning, so shout out to them. On top of replacing the steering rack itself, we're also going to be replacing the U-joint for the steering rack that goes right here up to the steering shaft inside of the car here. Now, the whole reason I'm swapping to this STI one is the WRX one has a damper built into it, and once we get it out, I'll show you guys that damper. But this is going to make the steering feel way more responsive and way better. Now, the whole point of going to a 2015 plus STI rack is the steering ratio. The ratio on these racks is a little bit better. This is about 13 to 1. I want to say these ones are about 14 or 14.5 to 1, somewhere in that range. So the first thing we need to do with our WRX here is, well, at least for me, is I need to get it up in the air. So I'm going to air this thing up, get the quick jack slid under it. I have an oil leak right now that I need to wipe up coming off of the dipstick. I still need to fix that, so I'll probably fix that one down there today also. But let's get this thing up in the air so that way I can start walking you through how to get this old rack out and what exactly we have to do here. Down and pop this hood right on open. Yep, definitely leaked a good amount of oil. Sick, now it's in the air. Let's go ahead and pop these front wheels off. So we're gonna have to obviously undo the tie rods. Now the first thing that I'm going to do, you don't have to do this, is I'm going to try to get as much of this power steering fluid out of the reservoir as I can, just to reduce how much I actually spill everywhere, because let's be honest, it is literally going to spill everywhere. There we go. Suck out as much of this fluid as we can. And we're going to have to go down to Subaru and get some more today. So this power steering fluid is just normal automatic transmission fluid from Subaru, so it's red. I wouldn't advise using anything other than OEM if you're going to be doing this. Try to stick with OEM. So now that we've got most of the fluid drained out of here, you guys, the first thing that we need to do before we even start dropping the power steering rack out is you've got this rod here that comes to the knuckle. This is your tie rod end. Now, the biggest thing that you want to make sure when you're doing this is make sure that your steering wheel, for the most part, stays straight. Because if you go to install the new rack and your steering wheel's like off left or off right, your entire steering ratio is going to be all sorts of messed up. So make sure that your steering wheel is centered straight, so that way it doesn't screw anything up. So periodically, as you go through this install, just check your steering wheel to make sure it's straight. For these tie rod ends, it should just be a 14 mil or a 17 mil on top. I forget off the top of my head. We are going to drop the sway bar end links, so that way we can rotate the sway bar up and out of our way. Down here on the bottom of the car, you've got this black skid plate right here that we are going to end up taking off. It should just be a whole bunch of 12 and 14 millimeters holding it on. That is just like a guard or a protective thing for the steering rack. And then the lines for the steering rack, we're gonna have to get up and behind this subframe here. There should be 2 of them that go up to the hard lines that go up to the power steering pump up top and the reservoir. So let's start off by getting our end links off our sway bar disconnected. Let's get our tie rod ends off of the knuckles, and let's get this little shield guy, this under tray guy, off of here. Cotter pins are out on both sides for the inner or for the outer tie rod right here. So what we're gonna do now is blast that nut off. I soaked it in PB Blaster for like 10-15 minutes. Hopefully that should make it come out a lot easier. I am going to just send it with like a 1/2 inch electric impact to try to blast that guy off of there. Once that's off, we'll do the other side, then we can go under the car and start doing all the fun stuff down here. We'll try with the 3/8 first. Okay, yep, that just came right off. Dope! And there is our old crusty castle nut. Let's go to the other side. Just as forgiving, it'd be really nice. Yep, dope. Now, normally in these situations, you'd want to be kind of gentle with this tie rod. I'm not, because we're replacing it. So I'm just gonna grab a hammer and beat the hell out of it to get that tie rod to come out of that knuckle. Lovely. All right, let me move this camera real quick. It's legit like straight up in my way. There we go. All right, now that we've got the arms disconnected, we're gonna go ahead and pop off the sway bar. It's just a couple 12 mils, and it should, actually no, we'll take off this undersplash shield first. 12s and 14s, I believe. They're all 14s, I think, actually. Come right off, which it does. I'm gonna get this guy set aside with all of the bolts for it. Let's get the sway bar out of the way first, which should just be 12s, I believe. Yeah, just 12s. There we go. Now we need to get to the steering shaft linkage, which we can access from right back here. You're gonna see it. It's two 12s and a giant shaft. Let me grab the camera and I'll see if I can really show you guys this. And I'll kind of show you where the lines and everything are that we're gonna be disconnecting right now. Keep in mind, this is going to make a total mess when you take some of this stuff out, so be prepared. Okay, just be prepared. Actually, I think I can hit this bolt while I'm right here. All right, you guys, I'm gonna do my best to show you. So we've got our like protective rack off of here. We've got our tie rods dingle-dangling right here going up to our rack. On both sides, the sway bar is removed. You guys can see why I'm swapping this rack. It's just like so freaking leaky up in here. Everything is just covered in power steering fluid. I think it's a couple lines and the seals inside of the rack right here. So to take the rack out, we're not gonna do this yet. You've got a couple 14s. You've got one right here, one right here, one on the subframe, and then one right above it right there. On the other side, you've got one right here and one right there, and that's all that holds this rack up. So, and let me slide back here. All right, right there is your steering shaft linkage. So this is what I was talking about with the damper built in on the WRX one. This is why we're swapping to the STI one. So I've already undone the bolts. There's one up top right there, and then one more. You'll see them, dude. There's two 12s that hold this thing to the shaft up there and the shaft down here. Oh, dude, it looks like we're leaking from the seal there too. Now on this side, we've got these two lines right here behind the axle. They're gonna be a little bit of a pain. I actually might end up taking this axle out. We'll see. If I can access those relatively easily, so be it, we'll do that. So let me start by fighting with these lines, because that's actually the next thing I have to do, is get those lines disconnected and then let any excess fluid drain out of there. Once we've got those two lines out, we can start disconnecting the rack from the subframe here and pull this thing right out. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, this absolutely sucked to get out, but it came out. So I was fighting with these lines for quite some time because they absolutely sucked to get out of the car. The easiest way that I found to undo these bolts is, first of all, the line that goes to these, those don't unscrew and screw, okay? It's only these fittings here. This is what screws and unscrews from the hard line, so don't try to sit there like I did and try to unscrew the line when it's the fitting that unscrews. Second, the easiest way I found to get these was a 3/8 ratchet, a 3-inch extension, and a crow's foot. You're gonna need a 17 for that one and a 14 for this little baby one right here. Now, once you have both of those out, you should have already disconnected the bolt from your steering shaft right here, this guy. So this is what I was talking about, how this one has a damper in it, and then this new STI one does not have a damper in it. So the one without the damper is the one that we're putting in, and that's going to give a lot more feedback when it comes to driving, because this damper absorbs a lot of like crap. Perrin does make a damper kit, which I was going to install on the steering rack, but I gave that damper kit to Matt for mittens because obviously I'm doing the 15 plus STI steering rack upgrade, so we don't have a damper anymore. So this thing, I mean, it works, it just is dumb in my opinion. So now that we've got our new rack here, I'm gonna go ahead and leave the protective caps on those guys there. We're gonna get this rack up and installed. So we're gonna have to fanoodle this guy up and in there to get it to fit. Once it's in and everything's bolted in, I'm gonna get those lines put back on right there. I am gonna get our steering shaft temporarily put on. I need to see the orientation on this. There is a sticker that has a whole bunch of Z's on it, and I don't know if that goes on the top or the bottom, but luckily I have a 15 plus STI right here to reference off of. So if I come in here, I should be able to take a peek down there to see the orientation of it. Hello, you beautiful little 6-cylinder. How are you doing today? Where is, the Z's go on the top. Weird. All right, cool. Now that I know the Z's go on the top, I know which side to put on the steering rack. Go ahead and get our steering shaft put onto our rack. The Z's go on the top, so this side will slide on somewhere like this. Somewhere like this. Like that. That guy go on there. Bloop, so floppy. So much floppiness. Oh yeah, look how nice that slides on though. Beautiful. Oi, my friends, I need to grab the bolt. Oh, we are dripping so much power steering fluid still. Oh, lovely. I can't get enough of it. This is all I ever wanted, was just power steering fluid everywhere. Slide my happy butt down here with our new steering rack here. Try to fanoodle my way up in here. The U joint's got to go up through this hole here. And then I need that guy to kind of go up into his home there. It's a very tight fit. Okay, so come on, can we just cooperate here? Oh man, all right, cool, there's that. Okay, so that side is up and on. That side is, for the most part, up and on. So I'll grab one of these long boy bolts here to start getting this guy into the subframe. I need these lines to kind of I need this whole thing to rotate up. There we go. Give me one more of these 14s just so I can get this guy started. I just want this to be able to hang out right here and dingle dangle. So now that we've got this guy dingle dangling, I'm gonna get this steering shaft put onto his home, which looks like it'll be a pain in the ass. Maybe not. I might have to drop the rack farther, because you have to have the rack drop down a decent ways to be able to get this guy up in there. Go in your home, Jimbo. There we go. Now it's in. So now that I've got the steering shaft on the rack, why did I just hear a dog? Now I can push this rack up and on to get these bolts in. Just kind of what we want. Our new steering rack in with the linkage, and everything is hooked up, all the lines are hooked up, everything like that. So now that we have all that stuff done under the car, we're gonna get our tie rods in. I will show you guys what it's looking like down there. Before we start slapping tie rods on the knuckles and everything like that, we are gonna take measurements off of our old rack and just mimic those over to this one. That should get our alignment fairly close. Down here on the rack, so I did end up using the 08 to 14 brace that originally came with the car. The 15 plus one, it didn't really want to line up too well, so I did reuse that brace. The new brace for down here that goes up to the strut tower, that little silver guy right there, that bolted right up just fine. There is a little rubber nipple, if you guys can see it right there in the center of that, and that is directional. It can only go on one way. After you have that done, you are pretty much able to just slide the linkage and whatnot up in here to get it on there. It's a little bit of a pain, but it's on there. It ain't going anywhere. We've got everything hooked up down here. Our lines are hooked up over there. And like I was saying, when it comes to doing the lines up in here, the easiest way that I found to do it was to go up and over this axle with a crow's foot. So the crow's foot, you can get up and over it, get on it, and then have the wrench up under the downpipe. You don't have to take the axle out. You don't have to take the downpipe out. Will it make your life easier if you want to? Yes, 100%, but you do not have to do it. So now that we've got this rack installed, let's get our tie rods put back up on. Actually, let's get our sway bar on, because I think I gotta get the sway bar on and then I can do the tie rods. So let's get the sway bar put back up on here, our splash shield for down here, and then we'll do the tie rods, mimic our alignment, and then we'll do a bleeding procedure on our rack here. Dude, that linkage is gonna feel so good. So I kind of realized something. It doesn't really matter if I measure these or not, because the inner and outer tie rods on both of these are different. So you see this guy's gonna be hella like towed out. So we're gonna just have to make some toe adjustments after we get all this bolted back up and put our castle nut back on. Tighten down our castle nut. Sick. I'm putting some fluid in it. I'm gonna have to go get more fluid, but we've got our tie rods put back on temporarily because I still gotta make some alignment adjustments. Tie rods back on, front end links back on, bottom splash guard back on. Let's put some fluid in here and hope it doesn't leak. Oh yeah, I can still see it's hella towed out. Here is to hoping for no leaks. That's a mess. Should have freaking seen that one coming. I legit do this every single time I fill up power steering system. So now that the reservoir is full, I have to turn the steering wheel left and right a little bit to get air bubbles out and bleed that rack. Don't start the car until after you've done this step. Don't overfill your reservoir like me either. You may have just saw a random time lapse. It's because we ran into a random issue that I didn't know, and I guess it's pretty common. I guess Subaru doesn't center their steering racks when they ship them to you, which confuses me. I don't know why they don't center them, but they don't center them. So when I went to bleed the power steering system for the first time, I could turn right, what, like a quarter turn? Like a third of a turn?
I can explain this very well because I made this much harder than it needed to be. So you should have a turn and a quarter of a turn.
A turn and a quarter. Each way.
Direction.
Each way.
And so I was like, yo, all we gotta do is take the steering wheel, and since we're like this, put it back to center, take it off, and then I'll turn it this way. And for some reason in my head, angles became backwards. So
left was right and right was left.
We kept losing more and more and more, and I went, why is this happening?
So to make your guys' lives easier on yourselves, before you put the steering rack in, grab a pair of like an adjustable wrench, turn the steering wheel all the way right, make a mark on the shaft and on the rack itself, turn it all the way left, count the number of turns, make another mark, and then do half of that back, and then center it between the two lines. And that is the center of your steering rack. Do not do what I do, or do not do what I did and thought that the rack was centered from the factory. I legit thought, it only makes sense that it would be centered from the factory.
Another thing that made a lot more sense when I totally stopped listening to the steering wheel or the rack, you turn it all the way one direction and then just put your finger right on like the quarter turn right there, and then turn it back a turn and a half to center, and the steering wheel is probably gonna be like this, but if you're holding your finger there, that's where you know center needs to be. Yeah. So then disconnect the rack at that point.
Disconnect the rack from the
with your finger still there. Take the steering wheel and turn it back to center, and then reconnect the rack.
Yeah, so you're gonna have to have two people doing it that way. You're gonna have to have one person in the car, which was Matt, and one person under the car, which was me, disconnecting the rack from the subframe, dropping it, adjusting the linkage, and then bolting it back up and test. We got it recentered.
We did.
It was a pain in the ass. It's like
in a perfect world, you shouldn't have to deal with
No, so center your rack before you put it in. Now let's get back to bleeding the power steering system. Then I need to go to Subaru, grab the cotter pins for the end, or for the tie rods, put the wheels back on, and we should be done. But we made this way more difficult than it needed to be. Okay, to properly bleed this, what you're gonna do, again, is turn your steering wheel lock to lock. All the way left, then all the way right, then all the way left, then all the way right, slowly a couple times, and that's gonna start sucking fluid in and pushing air out. So, I'm gonna hop in the car, I'm gonna start turning the wheel left, right, left, right, left, right, start bleeding this. We'll fill it up. If I need to go get more power steering fluid, I will. I have about a quart here, which should be enough. But let's get to turning. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. We got no leaks, right? We got no leaks, which is good. No more power steering fluid leaks. Are we even going down in fluid? We're not really going down in fluid, so I think we're pretty much bled, to be honest. I think all the turns that Matt was doing when I was under the car bled the power steering quite a bit. I actually think that bled it a lot more than I thought it did. We essentially got to realign the front end of the car, which shouldn't be too bad. So, dope. That's pretty friggin' bled, I guess, because I'm not seeing anything else come out. So we're gonna call that good and dandy. Put our cap back on. I'm gonna run to Subaru, go grab these cotter pins real quick, and then we're gonna come back and finish this install. So that way I can be done with this and not have to deal with this ever again, because I don't want to deal with this literally ever again. All right, friends, we're back from Subaru, and we have cotter pins. So, I'm gonna get these cotter pins back into the tie rods, and that'll secure them down to ensure that they don't come out. And then we're gonna get the wheels back on the car, put the car back on the ground. I'm gonna make some adjustments to the tie rods because you know they turn, you can turn them. So to adjust your toe, you're gonna turn the inner tie rod. So I'm just gonna get the toe back to eyeball 0. I'll align the car later, I'm not worried about aligning it, but you will need an alignment after you do this. Otherwise, your car is gonna be like this, your toe's gonna be in, your toe could be one in, one out, could be opposite, one out, one in. They both could be toed in, they could both be toed out, who knows? I don't know how you set up your alignment. So, let's get these cotter pins in and get these wheels back on. All right, you guys, there we have it. 2015 plus STI steering rack installed on our 2014 WRX Hatch. It doesn't really matter if it's a hatch or a sedan. Now keep in mind, this steering rack swap was pretty direct bolt-on for us. If you're in a GD chassis, an OBXT, a Legacy GT like next to me, I've heard of some people having to cut the tie rods a little bit shorter because obviously the track width on a 2015 STI is wider than that of one of these. For this car, it was pretty spot on, didn't have to cut or modify anything. The STI linkage, if you do decide to do that, get a 2014 or like 11 to 14 STI linkage versus doing a 2015 linkage like I did. I did notice that the steering shaft sat pretty deep inside of there, and it was a little bit of a pain to get the bolts to go back in for it to cinch up on that steering shaft from the steering wheel coming out through the firewall. But aside from that, everything was pretty much easy deal. The worst part was probably undoing the old lines off the old rack. Like I said, a 3/8 ratchet, a 3-inch extension, and a 14 and a 17 millimeter crow's foot will definitely help you out. I will link below the cotter pins, the power steering fluid, the steering rack itself. I got this one from Flatirons Tuning. And that STI linkage, as well as some other miscellaneous tools that you may need here and there. But for the most part, like I said, it's direct bolt-on. If you're in like an 08 plus WRX STI, well, if you're in like 08 plus WRX, I should say. For those who have VA WRXs, 2015 plus WRXs, do not consider doing the swap. You have an electronic steering rack. You have no need for an hydraulic one. It's way more trouble than it's worth to try to fit one up in there. But that's all I got for you guys on this one. If this video helped you, go ahead and hit that like button, turn to black, blue, green, yellow, purple, silver, cyan. Like I said, you're probably here because A, you want to do the swap, B, you may be curious as to what goes into it, C, maybe you're bored, D, E, F, G, I don't know. But if you guys like the video, you know what to do. Go ahead, hit that like button, turn whatever color turns for you. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you want to be, one of these corners, no idea which one I'll put it in quite yet, but with that, I'll catch you guys in the next one. So peace out, homies. Woo!